So, hi guys, welcome to the Very Serious Business Podcast. I am here with Rommel, who is the founder of Emet Ease, which is actually Rommel. Why don't you tell us about the product and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Rommel. I'm the founder and inventor of Emet Ease. And Emet Ease is a new treatment for nausea and vomiting. So traditionally, antiemetics and anti-nausea treatments, everything that exists on the market to deal with nausea and vomiting, has one end goal, which is prevention, making sure the person doesn't throw up. But what happens when the body rejects prevention? Now you're left in a state where the consumer has absolutely nothing on the market to help them through that experience. And this is where Emet Ease comes in. We take care, comfort, and control that goes beyond prevention.
Very cool. All right, let's just kind of hit our list of questions. What's the story behind how you started Emet Ease? Can you tell the audience about how you came up with the idea and how you kind of started everything?
Yeah, so I myself, I go through nausea and vomiting a lot. I've experienced it every morning for the last several years. And one of the things that always bothered me most was the sensory aspect or the sensory trauma of throwing up. It tastes bad, smells bad, feels bad. There's kind of like that aspect of shame when you go through it. And one day I was sitting there after having been sick, and I'd been throwing up on an empty stomach, and it tasted really bad, smelled really bad. So much so that it was causing cyclic vomiting. The sensory aspect of it was so bad that it would cause repeat vomiting. And I had the idea to quickly modify what was inside of my stomach contents to change the experience of throwing up. And when I had that idea, I thought, hey, does this exist on the market? Because this is something that would be really useful. And that's when I realized something like that didn't exist on the market. And so that was 5 months ago, right? And since then, I've gone forward and I've engineered a format that can achieve this effect that is also very respectful of what people experience when they're going through nausea. There's heightened sensitivity to palate. You don't want to swallow certain things. You don't want to do this and that. And so I spent time with the chemical engineer, and we figured out a way to achieve this utility of what we call sensory wellness, which is an extended period of time where sensory stimuli has been modified for the user so that should prevention fail, not all control is lost.
Yeah, very cool. One other question was, can you just kind of I don't know, describe the experience of vomiting, and I guess kind of emphasize, the negative experiences that Emet Ease helps kind of pacify a little bit.
Yeah, so as mentioned before, throwing up is traumatic physically, but it's also traumatic psychologically and emotionally, you know. And
Yeah.
when you throw up, you experience a assault on the senses. And so Emet Ease fulfills that gap in patient care and what isn't being targeted by things in the market for people.
Yeah. All right, very cool. So you're in the Marines, right? You're in the Marines before you became a founder. Can you, I don't know, just tell us about your time in the Marines? A lot of people think that's cool. Just kind of tell us about it.
Yeah, in 2019, I enlisted in the United States Marine Corps. I was 17 at the time. I had met some specific criteria needed to enlist at that age, but I had already graduated and I had parental consent, and I enlisted as a field artillery, 0811. I spent about 8 months in service and then was medically separated. But in that time, I went through boot camp, Marine combat training, and was about to start my MOS school. But then I left service and came back out in the civilian world.
Sure. Hey, what made you want to do artillery in the Marines? So that's just kind of chose it out of random, or what made you want to do artillery?
I had a requirement to need to ship out by a certain date. Otherwise, I'd be homeless because the person who I was living with could only take care of me until 18 because of certain stipend checks that they were receiving from the state. And so that was the only thing that was available in the same month that I needed to leave.
Okay, sure. Um, so most people don't want to talk about vomiting because it's taboo. Why do you think no one has like created a product like this before? Why do you think you're the first one to kind of create this product category for nausea?
This is a good question. One, because as you already mentioned, vomiting is taboo. Um, and it's coming to market, and for some past examples, we didn't used to talk about hydration on the market like we do now. We didn't.
That's so true. I never thought about that. That's so
Yeah.
true. Yeah.
Until people like Liquid IV came through, we didn't think of electrolytes and hydration as an essential daily wellness tool. We didn't think of probiotics and prebiotics as a daily wellness tool until somebody started to educate people on why things like this are important. As for the reason I don't think Emet Ease or something to the equivalent exists yet,
Yeah.
is one, Emet Ease is being invented by somebody who experiences the problem they're trying to solve. A lot of these
Hmm.
pharmaceutical giants sit in a tower and they guess what the consumer wants. And from their viewpoint, the only thing the consumer wants is to not throw up. That's great, but as we discussed before,
Oh,
that's not always possible. And so traditionally, it's just kind of accepted at this point that if you throw up, you throw up. You go through it and you're done with it. However, the reality is for millions and millions of people, even just here in the United States alone, every single year, that they go through things that cause them to throw up for days, weeks, sometimes a month at a time. And it's a very real hell for them that they can't prevent. And so
hmm.
they need a method of making it a little easier for themselves.
Yeah, I knew a girl used to like throw up a lot, and it was really bad. Softens your teeth. It just does a lot of bad stuff to you. Um, yeah. So if you can answer the question, you mentioned Emet Ease works both on the mouth and stomach. Maybe just walk the audience through like what it does in the mouth and stomach. You know.
Yeah, so Emet Ease is a multi-phase ingest product, and our layered formulation targets both the mouth and the stomach separately. There are certain ingredients that, as we discussed earlier, users going through nausea, they have a hard time with sensory stimuli. If they taste something they don't like, whether that's texture, flavor, it can
Mhm.
cause sensory aversions. They can cause gagging, it can cause them to spit something out, or it could even cause them to throw up. And so Emet Ease has layered our active ingredients into a multi-phase format that
Yeah.
respects the struggles of what somebody who goes through nausea and vomiting needs to be accommodated with. And so the multi-phase format allows us to target both the oral orifice with actives and the gastric orifice with actives separately without impeding on those accommodations that people need that go through nausea and vomiting.
Yeah. What was your first version like? So whether that just be like, the first idea you kind of had. Um, yeah, what was that idea like? And as much as you can talk about it, like how has that evolved over time, you know?
Yeah, in the beginning, there was an additional phase. It was a tri-phase format for Emet Ease. That was discarded, one, because it's already hard enough to make a bilayer phase product. Triple phase product is even harder, right? And there are also other innovations that were attached to the Emet Ease platform that would be world's first, non-utilized, but the cost in order to bring it to market would make it much higher in order to make Emet Ease a reality. And so we decided to strip our original vision into a twice stripped MVP format and validate the idea with the base
So,
formula before we go and add additional R&D costs to bring these other innovations to market as well.
so, originally it's going to be a tri-layer type thing, right? But right now it's just two because the mouth and the stomach. Is that a good summary? That's accurate.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's the original idea was that the tri-layer format would have a dedicated layer for the cross-regional delivery mechanism that we have incorporated into it. And we've simplified it into a bilayer format and instead embedded into a radial depth the delivery mechanism into a certain layer of the first phase instead to simplify the format.
Yeah. Okay. Oh yeah, I get what you're saying. Um. Oh, sorry, I don't know what that is. Um. If you can answer this question, you said all your ingredients are already recognized as FDA safe. Um. how'd you figure out how to repurpose them into something new? I guess you were already kind of looking for the idea, right? You already kind of like had the end goal in mind and just kind of found these ingredients or found these mechanisms. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I sat down and I thought to myself, okay, what do we want to achieve? We want to achieve a extended period of modulated sensory stimuli or sensory experience. So what components have these effects? And
Yeah.
the desire, of course, was to make sure that they were safe for the consumer and able to be used applicably for as many people as possible. And so there are certain active ingredients, or what the FDA refers to as GRAS, GRAS, or generally recognized as safe, that had those
Yeah.
utilities. However, these ingredients weren't normally used for these utilities. And on their own, by themselves, they couldn't achieve what we wanted to unless we stacked these active ingredients together and achieved a multi-layered response to bring forth this utility that we wanted.
Yeah. Okay, that's kind of what we thought. That's kind of what I thought. Um, quick side note, can you hear this beeping or no?
Not really. I think you just muted yourself.
Sorry, I'm getting too many fucking phone calls, and since I'm all on Mac, it's all mixing up. Um, all right, just going on our list, dude. Um, okay, yeah, I guess at what point did you recognize this wasn't just a home experiment? It was an actual business with IP worth protecting. Was it right when you had the idea you were like, okay, this is viable, this is solid, or was it somewhere along like the journey that you were like, I can really run with this, you know?
Well, I think a lot of these things start off as just a crazy idea, right? You sit there, you have a crazy idea, and you say to yourself, well, wouldn't that be cool if? And then
Yeah.
I went through that stage and I thought, it'd be cool if that existed. And I wanted to go on with my life. But it was so surreal. I was having a hard time sleeping for like 2 weeks because I couldn't stop thinking about it. Because I realized the amount of impact that a product like this could have on millions and millions of people. And so I decided to pursue it, not for myself, not for the money that I knew it could possibly make me, but for the benefit of other people. And actually,
Yes.
I remember on the third day after I had the idea, when I was kind of sitting there and I was about to pull the trigger on letting it end at that's a crazy idea.
Mm.
I'd woken up that morning and I opened TikTok, and the first thing on my For You page was very sad, but there was a 17-year-old girl that was hooked up to a respirator, and she was showing in the video that the hospital had just handed her a pamphlet to fill out her decisions on end of life care and hospice care because she was
Yeah.
going to die. And it made me really sad because I know that in hospice, nausea and vomiting is something that's very recurrent. The body is shutting down. It's very sad to think about. But I
Uh,
knew that for a girl like this who's going to be going through some of the hardest moments of her life, I had an idea that could help make that moment a little bit easier for her. And if I didn't pursue that, I was not only going to not be able to help her, but I was going to be able to not help millions of people. And I've always wanted to help people. Um, and when I realized I had an idea that could affect millions of people and have that kind of scale of impact, it became not a question of if I think I can do it, if I think I should do it. It became a matter of I need to do it.
yeah. Yeah, that's really cool. So, I don't think, the audience knows, but like, you basically started this thing, with the actual goal to like help people. It wasn't necessarily a profit incentive where you saw the market was so big and this much ARR. It was the main motivation was to actually help people here. That's correct.
Yeah, that's correct. And there is a you don't see that a lot in founders, especially because a lot of times they
Yeah.
want to talk about exit strategy, exit strategy, exit strategy.
Yeah.
When can I sell for as much as possible as soon as possible? That's not really my goal. My goal is to make an impact on people who need that impact on some of the worst moments of their life. And
Yeah.
so that is what my driving force is.
Yeah, that is very cool. Um, so as a pre-seed company, what is the day-to-day like for you? And like what are you actually doing like right now behind the scenes? Yeah.
Well, for example, today, I went and sent the Emet Ease specification formulation document to a contract manufacturer for review so that we can discuss how much it will cost to make this, and I can get a quote before I go and approach investors, and I can have a good idea of exactly where that money will go, how much money I need.
Mm-hmm.
And so everything right now is kind of setting stones in place for, so to speak, boost investor confidence. You have to make the idea look as good as possible, as plausible as possible, and of course, for them, make as much money as possible.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. So right now, most of your day to day is, or I guess, like you said, you're doing tasks that would build investor confidence, so you can move on to the next step of taking this money and, sort of running with it. You've mentioned, well, yeah. So you mentioned you do an IP around this cross-regional delivery mechanism. What is your experience just dealing with intellectual property in general? I'm assuming you're talking to lawyers and stuff like that. There's a lot of people out there who like have ideas in their head, but they're really intimidated about the idea of filing a patent and stuff like that. What is your experience with all that kind of stuff?
Well, unfortunately for the people who are intimidated, I'm not going to offer advice that helps with that idea. Patents are way more complicated than the vast majority of people realize. And
Okay.
for the vast majority of people, if you want to make money off of your patent, you should be having attorneys sit down and write that patent for you. Theoretically, you could write the patent yourself. However, a patent is not the end all be all when it comes to protection. Your patent is only as capable to protect you as your ability to protect it in court. And you have a better way of protecting it in court if that patent is well written and harder to infringe upon by other parties. And so if you have an idea and you just think it'd be cool to have something on your wall that says you got a patent, by all means, but if you want to make money off of your patent or revolve a business around your intellectual property, you need to make sure that you're taking smart legal and financial steps to ensure that is as solid of a foundation as possible.
Yeah, that's great advice. I like how you said your patent is only as useful as your ability to defend the patent in court. Um, yeah, I like that. That makes sense. So yeah, another question is like how much time is spent on product versus fundraising right now? But mostly your energy is like fundraising type stuff right now. Is that correct?
It's a dual path. There are tweaks and changes and thoughts that need to continue to go into product development. And of course, there really is no one thing you do at one time. It's
Mm-hmm.
especially as a solo
Yeah.
founder, you do it all at once. And so it's kind of split between, like I said, taking steps to boost investor confidence prior to raising seed, and of course the product development as well.
Um, are you still working other jobs right now? Are you still working other jobs so you can have money to throw into this scene, or is this your main focus?
No, I still work as a cook.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because that was one of the questions. How do you manage your time? You're still working on other jobs. I mean, simple question, but yeah, I guess how do you manage your time? Just, being an entrepreneur and also having a job like a lot of startups, founder startups do.
It's a sacrifice, although I don't like to call it a sacrifice because let's be honest, right? When you work a job and you come home, you want to relax. You want
So,
to say hit the bong, play the latest Battlefield 6 or whatever your favorite game is, watch a movie, go to the
mhm.
park with your dogs. Um, you can't build something for your future doing that. And so it's a sacrifice, but I don't like to call it a sacrifice because I like to view it more instead as investing into my future. Because sure,
Mhm.
there are certain things I could buy, or there are certain things I could spend my time doing when I'm not at work that would make me happy, that would leave me fulfilled. But that's not going to get me where I want to be.
Yeah, I like that too. You don't see it as a sacrifice, it's an investment. That's how I kind of like with my vending machines and stuff. And I teach swim lessons. I'm like, this is just a cost of business. I don't know. I like how you said it's not a sacrifice, it's an investment. Um, so okay, yeah, let's another question is, you said your pre-seed valuation is $3 million. How do you come to that number? If you don't mind
So
me
this is a
asking.
good question. Um,
Okay.
so traditionally, when you get a valuation, if you're already making revenue, they look at how much money you've made and they'll apply a multiple. Normally it's 5x. But if you're rapidly growing, it might be 10x. If you're stagnated or you're declining, it might be less. When you're pre-seed, you don't have any revenue yet, so you can't use the standard metric to determine a valuation. However, it's important that you have an understanding of how much your company is worth because you're about to go and sell equity to raise money, and you need to know how much that equity is worth. And so when you do a pre-seed valuation, it's done in a metric of de-risking the business from the perspective of investors. So it's basically convincing them why it is that you're capable of making money with your idea. And so there's different valuation methods. For example, there's the Berkus method, which assigns a plus or minus valuation to separate topics. For example, one topic might be, what is the idea? Are there competitors? And they'll give you up to $500,000 for that topic. Now, Emet Ease lacks any direct commercialized competitors on market. It's a blue ocean product, as they say. So
Yeah,
you get
I like that book.
500,000 full marks. And then you go through the other things and you do like, okay, who's on your team? What hurdles as a startup in your industry normally going to face? How are you designed your company in order to deal with them? So for Emet Ease, topics like regulatory compliance and scientific credibility, especially since we're dealing with chemically engineered food products, is kind of the main topic. And you can show an investor that, hey, you have dedicated long-term support for regulatory consulting and for scientific consulting. And so again, you get high metrics on your marks towards your valuation. And so 3 million is a high valuation. And it was very surreal because we sat down and we achieved that valuation just 3 months after I had the idea. And it was so weird. And of course, you have to sanity check that valuation. So I went to my state-endorsed small business development center, and they assigned an investment mentor for me. And he sat down, and the first time we met, he was like, how much is your company worth? And I was like, what do you mean? Like how high it can scale financially? He's like, no, like right now, what is it worth? And I said, I don't know. He's like, well, you have to figure that out. Take 2 weeks, figure that out, bring that number back to me, tell me why you think that, and I'll sanity check it and tell you if I agree with you or I think it should be higher or lower. And 3 million was what he agreed on 100% that it would be worth. If not even, he said, go a little bit more aggressively on the valuation than that.
Yeah.
And so on paper, it's kind of weird. I'm a multimillionaire. It's illiquid wealth. It's not money in the bank, so to speak. But since you own the company and the company is worth $3 million, you're effectively on paper a multimillionaire. So it was a very surreal, kind of odd experience to experience that just 3 months after I had an idea sitting on my couch.
But so you haven't sold any equity yet, right?
No.
Oh, okay.
Once
So
you
it's just
sell equity, it'll be realized. So when you walk in and you speak to investors, they obviously want to get the best bang for their buck possible. So they'll try to convince you that your company is worth less than what you're advising them your company is worth. And so that's why you need to know why your company is worth that much money and stand your ground and sell equity that is fair.
Nice. Yeah, very cool. I don't know much about, raising money and stuff for startups. This is cool for me to learn. How much equity do you think you'll give up? I know it's hard to say, but like you'll always have at least like 60%. Do you always want to keep at least 51%,
So to come to market, the standard advice is that you don't want to give up more than 20% of equity because you may need to raise future rounds of money.
Duh. Yeah. Okay.
So as a pre-seed company in our pre-seed fundraising round, you don't want to give up more than 20% equity. Now, 20% equity for our valuation equates to $600,000. As we talked about before, we need significantly less than that to achieve bringing it to market. We'd probably only have to sell around 7 to 10% to bring it to market. And that gives you leeway if, say, you need to sell more equity or raise more money in the future.
Yeah. You learned did you have an interest in entrepreneurship, and like were you one that watched Shark Tank, or like you learned all this stuff after you came up with the idea,
No, I've had to learn all this stuff from the ground up.
Yeah, that's like
5 months ago.
Nice. And so to go to market, you estimate that you'll need like about 150 to 200 grand.
Mm-hmm.
Is that okay? Cool. What specifically does that money go towards? Yeah, what does it go towards?
So Around $50,000, that is production costs, actually manufacturing from benchtop samples to pilot production to full market launch of 25 to 40,000 units. Some of that, around $25,000, is spent on IP portfolios. So that's patents, trademarks, other things like that. Some of that money is set aside for logistical stuff, freight, third-party logistic costs, delivery. Some of that's set aside for customer support or web development. And then, of course, there's extra money as well in that ask for an additional cash buffer in case
Totally.
whatever money you think you need, ask for a little
Yeah.
bit. So that way you don't end up not having enough.
One thing you mentioned to me earlier is that you're gonna go after. Wait, yeah, did you say you're gonna go after public funding and then sort of angel investors? That's the order you're gonna do it in?
Well, it's very possible to receive crowdfunding. What's great about crowdfunding is that you don't sell any equity. You maintain full control of your share of the company.
Yeah.
And it's also a strong social proof. When somebody says, well, how do you know that people want it? You can say, I can tell you that people want it because I raised blank much money because people thought the idea was so good that the everyday person decided to donate money towards the idea. But
do you think you'll go like Indiegogo you'll do that down the line?
It's definitely, it'd be foolish to not at least pursue that avenue.
Yeah, I think it could kill it on Kickstarter or something like that, Yeah, I think that'd be a really good spot for it. Yeah, this is a good question. So, for founders who have never raised money before, such as myself, what is something about fundraising you wish you would have known earlier?
You're trying to convince somebody else that they can make money off of you or your idea, right? So you're not trying to convince them that you have a great idea, because a great idea is only a very small fraction of what it takes to make a successful business. You're trying to convince them that your idea and your execution on that idea will make them money. And so when you pitch it to them, pitch less, focus on your idea and how great you think the idea is, and pitch more on how the idea is going to make them money.
So how does still dealing with nausea and stuff like impact you just being a founder,
Personally, like, affecting my work, it doesn't. I experience it for like the first hour or two after I wake up. But in terms of product development, it has a significant impact on the way I design the product, because I'm designing the product for the consumer, but the consumer is also myself. And so I'm very keenly aware of what nuances or what design innovations are required in the product so that it best fits and accommodates the consumer. And because I go through what the consumer goes through, I don't have to sit there guessing. I know exactly what needs to happen, where, why, and how.
Yeah, that's what I thought. This is just a random question I just am curious about, but like, is it crazy going from like, you were homeless for a little bit, like Lime Cook, like, I guess you talked about it like it's surreal, but like you're dealing with really big numbers here now. Like you're dealing with really big dollar signs. Like, I don't know, what's that like, like, I don't know, what's it like from dealing with like, paycheck line cooking and maybe buying like fucking Chipotle to now dealing with like hundreds of thousands of dollars, what's that like?
I remember in the beginning, when I started to get an idea of costs, and it would be like, this is going to cost $50,000+. At first, I was like, this is never going to happen. Where am I going to get that money from? And that's kind of where I started to learn about startups and entrepreneurship. Of, hey, if your idea is so good and your execution is so good, you can convince somebody else to use their money to make your idea come true, and you can still make money off of it.
Yeah.
And so it requires a more malleable mindset into how you think money works. Money's weird. It exists, but it exists in a certain concept as we allow it to exist. And so if you don't have money, you need to find somebody else that has money. And money makes money, right? So you just have to change your mindset about what you can or can't do, and stop worrying about what you think you can do yourself, and figure out a way instead to make it happen.
Yeah, can you? Because I actually really agree with that. That like once you become a founder, like your ideas of money, um, and just how money works really shifts. Can you? I know it's going to be hard to like put into words, but can you try to elaborate on that? Like, I don't know. One thing I noticed is like similar to you. Like you realize there is money out there, even if you don't have it, you can just go get it. But like, can you just expand on, just how sort of your views on money have shifted? Yeah.
I guess one way I could put it is when I was speaking to one of the mentors with the Small Business Development Center, and they said, "Well, how much money do you need?" And I said, "We're expected to need about this much money." And
Yeah.
they laughed and they said, "That's great. That's not a lot of money." And I was like, "Well, objectively, like a couple $100,000 is a lot of money." But they're
Yeah.
like, for a business ass though, in order to bring something to market that's never been brought to market before, and in terms of like fundraising, objectively, it's not a lot of money
Hmm.
because you'll see a lot of people that need millions of dollars in fundraising in order to bring, take for example, have you ever heard like the Ouya, the old it
No.
was a game system that ran a bunch of like 1,000 crappy retro
Oh,
games.
I might have heard of it. I don't know. Yeah.
They had to raise millions of dollars for a janky GameCube, effectively, right? And they was able to do that. They found enough money to bring something that was objectively not a good idea into market. And so when you sit there and you realize, like, hey, this idea has so much more appeal that it has real social impact and real impact on human suffering, um, it's not going to be hard to find that money. Especially once you're confident and you've taken the necessary steps to make sure the execution is plausible and that you can do what needs to be done. You realize that it's not going to be that hard to get that money as you thought it was in the beginning.
Nice. So you've definitely, um, your view on how hard it is to access capital has definitely changed, right? You definitely think that before you started this, like getting money together for an idea is a lot easier than you thought it was. Is that accurate?
Objectively, it's not something that's easy per
Yeah,
se,
that's not the right
but it's
word.
not something that in the beginning, like I thought this is going to be impossible. It
Yeah,
is so much more possible, but only if you make it possible.
yeah. So I kind of like this question too. It's being a Marine takes a certain mindset. How has that discipline or intensity or anything else carried over on into entrepreneurship, or has it not really benefited
So
you or negated you in any way?
more than just the Marines, other experiences that I've gone through, like being homeless and working my way off the street with no sort of support system, and
Hmm.
cases of being in the Marines. Like for example, I'm a small dude. I'm 5'4". I weigh like a buck 20, even though I have a good build on me.
Yeah, you don't look
Um,
you look heavier than 120, but yeah, go ahead.
yeah, yeah, I look good. I've been I used to weigh 68 pounds at the same height as a teenager, and I've packed on twice that amount of weight and muscle. Um, But in the Marine Corps, you'd do the same job that the guy who's 6'4", 300 pounds is going to do. That's putting 80, 90 pounds of gear on and marching through the desert for 20 miles. Uh, you think, I can't do it. And you realize you can do it. And that starts to shape your mindset on a lot of things. You also go through experiences like being homeless and you say, this
Mhm.
feels impossible. I have nothing and nobody. How am I supposed to do this? And then you make it happen because you want it to happen. And so you start to realize that your only limiting factor in life is your ability to believe and pursue.
Yeah, dude, I love when people say stuff like that, dude. I need to hear that more often. I think you're totally right. Yeah, I mean, yeah, if you don't mind touching on it, like, what do you think you got from homelessness? Just like a toughness, like a grit, what do you, I'm not saying it was like a positive experience, but like of the positives you took out of it, what are they?
There's a certain resiliency that it
Yeah.
bred. Um, and it also changed me, and I didn't always feel like it was better. When I was younger, I used to think everybody in the world was good. I'd give anybody the shirt off my back if it meant helping them. And then when I was homeless, I realized that, like, hey, it's a dog eat dog world. And I had to kind of cut back on some of that empathy that I wanted to share with everybody and everyone in order to
Hmm.
make sure that I myself wasn't taken advantage of and then I could succeed and move forward with my life. And, it's that character development. It's that you can't be stagnant in life and you need to learn, you need to grow, and you need to become better in everything you do. And sometimes that requires what you feel a sacrifice about yourself. But a lot of times, what ends up starting as a sacrifice becomes a strength later down the line.
Yeah. Dude, I'm sure, you learn that lesson that not everyone's out to help you, you know. I learned that a little bit in adulthood, but I'm sure you learned it to a different degree than I did. Um, has there been anything like humbling about this journey or about, your journey in general from like being homeless to like now having a startup? Anything you would describe as like humbling kind of from that journey?
I remember in the beginning, especially like when I was starting sending emails, it felt really weird to sign off as founder slash CEO, because I still felt like the line cook who flipped burgers. And there's this term called imposter syndrome, where you feel like you're doing the job that you shouldn't really be doing because it's not really you. Except you realize like that's where everybody starts. And I dealt with things like imposter syndrome when I did game development. I taught myself game development, and I competed in game jams, and I learned it from the ground up. And
Mhm.
every 5 minutes when you're doing game development, you learn something else, or you realize that you don't know anything. You learn something, and then you go on to the next step, and then you realize you don't know anything, and you learn it, and then you go to the next step, and you realize you don't know anything. And so putting aside that self doubt and stepping into the shoes of what you really want to do is probably the most humbling thing, because you have to stop thinking about what you think you can or can't do, and you start thinking about what you need to do and what you should do.
Yeah, that actually kind of was one of the next questions is how do you handle self-doubt and burnout, especially self-doubt as a founder, which is a very like shaky, not well-defined path.
It In the beginning, doubt wasn't really something I dealt with. I dealt with it more recently as I've prepared to raise funding, because nobody wants to feel like they're making a fool of themselves. Nobody wants to
Mhm.
take their big, great idea and go in front of somebody and have them say, "Yeah, that will never work," or "I don't want to give you money for that." But you break eggs to make an omelet. Not everything is going to be a yes or a success. It's just the repeated attempts that eventually make it a success. And
Yeah.
so I got to a point where I kind of froze for a couple weeks, and I was like, do I really want to do this? I'm spending all of my what is a very small amount of disposable income to bring this into fruition, and I can't. Nobody can guarantee that something will work out, right?
Mhm.
And it's putting all that aside, because you can when I was in the Marine Corps, um, I was falling out of a hike at one point. Drill instructors just they like to push me specifically, out of like the most than anybody in the platoon, because I was the smallest guy. They wanted
Yeah.
to see if they could break the smallest guy.
Nice.
Um, and so one night we were supposed to carry ammo cans, and these are like 40-pound things,
Okay.
and we had to carry them on our chest. Couldn't like rest it on your shirt. You had to like carry it out right in front of you like this. And
Oh,
at like 4 a.m. in the morning for like
okay.
15 miles. And the idea of the exercise was that you were supposed to take the ammo can, and your other Marines would grab it from you and you could share the burden. But drill instructor came up to me. He went around. He looked for the heaviest one he could find. He's like, holding them both. He's like, okay, this one's the heaviest. He came and brought it to me. He's like, here's your ammo can, Rommel, but you're not allowed to give it to anybody else. And he said, nobody's allowed to take this ammo can from you. You're going to carry it the entire way by yourself. And I was like, man, y'all just really, really trying to break me for like what reason? But I started to fall out of formation at some point because I was the only person that had to do something like that. I had to shoulder the burden entirely myself. And it was a senior drill instructor of the platoon behind me. I was like falling out of formation, and as I started to reach the front of the other platoon, their guys in the front were harassing me. They were like kicking the back of my knees. They were pushing me, trying to get me to trip. And
Oh,
then their senior drill instructor saw that and like knocked him around, and he grabbed me by the back of the neck. He's like, "You're gonna walk right next to me, and you're not gonna go anywhere." And he told me something that I remember a lot. He said, "The pain of what you're going through right now hurts, but the pain of regret if you give up is something that's gonna follow you for the rest of your life." And so I remember that because when you die at the end of your life, you don't think about what you did do. A lot of people think about the things they didn't do or the things they wish they would have done. And so not pursuing something that you wanted to pursue hurts more than trying to pursue it and going along the bumpy road that it takes to do that.
yeah, that's cool. That's really cool that he kind of grabbed you by the back of the neck and told you that. Um, yeah, it's a really cool story.
And I did it. I stayed right next to that senior drill instructor, and I carried it all the rest of the way like I was supposed to. And this was like one of the final exercises at the end of boot camp. We were going through the crucible. And within 24 hours later, I had my EGA and I was officially a Marine. And I did what I thought I couldn't do. And I've kept that mindset through a lot of my life, whether it was being homeless or being an entrepreneur, that if you keep pushing yourself, you can do so much more than you think you're capable of.
Yeah, it's funny. I've heard a lot of people from the military tell me that lesson that it's like it's basically just really tough and then you do it and then you just realize how much you can get through and just that understanding of how much you can get through is like the fucking big takeaway from the military for a lot of people. Um, yeah, that's really cool. One of the questions was, oh wait, anything else you want to touch on, like from your Marine Corps days, or I don't know, that like a fucking a potential future entrepreneur would just like be useful for them to know about your experience, or not really?
No, that's about it. I tend to not enjoy talking about my time in the Marine Corps too much because I feel like a fake Marine because I didn't serve my full enlistment. Granted, outside factors pushed me out of the Marine Corps despite my wanting to or not wanting to. And so
Yeah,
it's not my fault, but it feels weird to call yourself a Marine when you didn't serve that 4 to 6 year enlistment. You didn't go in deployments like everybody else did. Sure, you got the Eagle Globe and Anchor.
yeah.
You're called a Marine, and they tell you, once you're a Marine, you're always a Marine. But a lot of the times, it just doesn't feel like that for me.
Yeah, I was watching a documentary about the Marines the other day, and it's actually something that they mentioned. It's like a real toughness for people that haven't been deployed and stuff. They feel like that imposter kind of syndrome. But that's cool. That's very cool. Um, what keeps you going when it feels everything's moving slower than what you want? If you even run into that issue at all right now. Yeah,
Everybody wants to succeed overnight, but that's
yeah,
just not a reality. If it's going slower than you want, oh well, that's just life. Um, if that irritates you, then you're not going to be able to succeed very well. If you can't handle that desire to, not everything's in your control. You don't get everything the way you want it to be, and so you just have to accept it and do what you can do as soon as you can do it. Know that you put in the best effort you can, and just let outside factors see things through the way they'll see through.
yeah. Nice. Um, once once you have the actual product on shelves, what's your big vision? Where could this technology go beyond nausea, like flavor masking, or yeah, just like flavor masking for like edibles or something like that. But like, do you have any other more vague, broader visions beyond nausea? Help basically.
So, Emet Ease is coming to market under a dietary supplement monograph, which allows us to describe the product under structure and function terminology. And so you have to speak about its utility under a certain way. Otherwise, the FDA interprets it as a drug claim. If you guarantee a specific therapeutic benefit, for example, if you say something like, makes vomiting less traumatic, you can't say something like that without it being flagged as a drug claim. What you
Oh,
can do is you can reformat the language and the benefits and the utility into structure and function claims. So, for example, instead of saying something like makes vomiting less traumatic, you can describe it as helps promote oral comfort during moments of gastric upset, which isn't a direct claim on a specific health benefit, but you allow the user to appreciate the utility through kind of putting the puzzle pieces together.
yeah,
So I would like to get to a point where Emet Ease can go through FDA trials and approval so that it can be advertised for its utility in a very blatant way. And
yeah,
so that we can also bring to market the other innovations that we've kind of left in our IP pipeline.
yeah,
But that costs 3 to 5 years and millions of dollars. In order to fund that, we're bringing Emet Ease to market as a dietary supplement first with compliant claim language in order to climb that ladder as things progress.
yeah. That's really cool, dude. I'm sure you could, you know, go through all the clinical trials and do it. You don't have a background in like statistics or like chemical science or anything really? You just kind of learned as you did it, right?
I don't even have a college degree.
Yeah, same.
It was kind of funny because the first time I spoke with my chemical engineer, I was just explaining the design format, what active ingredients I wanted, how they reacted with different receptors, and the chemical response that they would induce for what durations, under what amounts. I asked her at the end, I was like, "Do you have any questions for me?" She's like, "Tell me about yourself. Like, what is your background?" I was like, yeah, I'm a line cook, high school graduate." And she's like, "What? I thought you were like some chemist or
Cool.
pharmaceutical or white collar M&A." She's like, "You're discussing these things with me, somebody who's been a chemical engineer for nearly 40 years, in a way that one of my colleagues would discuss one of these things with me."
Nice.
And she's like, "You know what you're talking about because you're talking to somebody else who damn well knows what they're talking about,
Hmm.
and they knew that you knew what you were talking about." And
Yeah.
I've heard that from some other people too. Like from patent attorneys, they'd be like, "Okay, so you're a chemist?" I'm like, "No, I'm a line cook." And he's like, "Hold on, I think you cut out for a second. What did you say?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm a line cook." And he's like, "Well, how the hell did you come up with this idea?" And so, when I was younger, I well, actually, even now, I'm very literate. I've read thousands and thousands of books. I even have a home library of a couple hundred of my favorite books. Um, and I have a medicine cabinet of 60, 70 different items, and I can explain there to somebody
Oh,
how
okay.
each one works, like on the nervous system, or how each one reacts chemically. That's not something
Yeah,
most people should be able to do.
yeah,
I have an interest in it. I have what they used to call Asperger's, which now they call level 1 autism. And so I have an ability to retain information, especially information that I find interesting,
yeah,
and instantly absorb it and basically regurgitate it and apply it. And so there is nothing you can't learn that you want to learn. People go to college when they think they want to learn something, but college isn't the place where you go to learn. College is the place where you go to get a piece of paper that says you attended college.
yeah,
Um, College can't gatekeep any of the knowledge that's out there. You can go learn anything you want to, however you want to learn it. As long as you have the ability to apply it and digest it and understand it, you can learn and do anything.
yeah. I'm with you 100%, dude. We live in unprecedented access to human knowledge. Like it's really amazing times we live in. Um, if everything goes, yeah. So if everything goes right over the next, 3 to 5 years or whatever, what does your company look like? What kind of products are you guys offering? Yeah, like 3 to 5 years from now, something like that. Roughly, what do you think it'll look like?
Well, Emet Ease is a platform technology. We don't plan on, we discussed a twice stripped MVP format. And so what comes to market isn't all of our eggs in one basket product line. So there's going to be the simple SKU changes, different flavors, maybe a pediatric version for different defined dose ranges because children don't need as strong as much, or maybe they need something smaller to swallow, just because their bodies are different. But there are
Mm.
also those core innovations that we've left in our IP pipeline that we want to bring to market, especially to maintain market dominance over this category creation that we've invented called sensory wellness. And so 3 to 5 years from now, I hope to capture 1 to 3% of the uh, total addressable market for nausea and vomiting domestically in the United States,
Fucking yeah.
and change how people view traditional treatment. And I want there to be more options for user-centric psychological and emotional care that goes beyond just chemically trying to solve a problem.
Yeah, very cool. That's kind of what I thought. Dude, this is kind of a weirdly worded question, but do you think nausea relief could ever become a mainstream wellness category, and it be something that people talk about openly? I guess combined with that question is, do you think there is that much taboo around like nausea and vomiting? Like, as someone who hasn't struggled with it myself, it doesn't seem like it's that taboo to me. But yeah, do you think it's really that taboo? And then do you think it could ever become like a mainstream wellness category? Kind of like liquid IV, you said, you know?
It is taboo because if you go into work, is your coworker going to tell you if they spent the last 3 days throwing up every night? No. Are they going to tell you if they have back pain? Yeah. Are they going to tell you if they didn't get enough sleep? Are they going to tell you if they have a headache?
Yeah,
Um, Throwing up is seen by a lot of people as a shameful experience. It's gross, it's nasty,
it's gross. Yeah.
um, and so people don't talk about it much. And we discussed some of these other categories like probiotic, prebiotic, electrolyte, hydration, where people need to be educated on why it's important, to care for somebody beyond just prevention when it comes to nausea and vomiting. Because nausea is already a mainstream wellness category, right?
Yeah.
But it's a very one directional wellness category, which is focused on just prevention, phones falling
Mm-hmm.
over.
Agreed.
Um, what isn't mainstream is this idea of psychological and emotional care for nausea and vomiting, taking care, comfort, control beyond prevention. So, this idea of sensory wellness is something that isn't mainstream, and it's something that I feel a lot of people can appreciate the benefit of, but people need to be educated on first on why it's important and how we can do something to manage those things.
How do you see your product fitting into healthcare or wellness long term? Do you think it stays, I like this part, but do you think it stays consumer focused, like direct to consumer, or do you think it eventually gets picked up by hospitals, clinics, PT, whatever it is, you know?
I would like integration with clinics because
Yeah.
if you want to target a certain demographic, you need to find that demographic. And so, hospitals, clinics, care homes, hospice centers, rehab centers, pregnancy
Mhm.
centers,
Oh, yeah.
these are the places where you're going to find the most people who go through nausea and vomiting. Now, in order to target them, though, there is a regulatory requirement that, as a dietary supplement, a doctor can't endorse your product because a dietary supplement
Oh,
doesn't have a proven
oh, okay.
health outcome by the FDA. You can have natural health specialists or um, what they call holistic providers recommend your product, but in order to get into those kind of clinical settings, we have to go through the FDA approval process first.
Okay. Um, but that's something you definitely want to do, right? Like you for sure want to have this in pregnancy centers or whatever, right?
Yeah, if
Hospitals.
you want to reach the most amount of people possible,
Yeah.
those are your hotspots. That's where you'll find the most people with the most need. But there's
Yeah.
just there's guardrails around how you approach those things.
Dude, I think they could kill it though. Like I don't really understand your fucking company like you do, but like I could totally see this being in hospitals, you know, like you have chemo and they give you like a little fucking thing of tea and your Emet Ease pill or something, you know.
Yeah, locally, here in the city where I'm from, we have something called the Jay-Z Care Box, which is a foundation made by Jonathan Ziert. And the way it works is if somebody in the city or the surrounding areas is diagnosed with cancer, they receive a care box from the Jay-Z program, which contains emotional and comfort tools for people that are about to go through chemotherapy, radiation therapy, treatment plans like that. And so the box contains things like a special warmth blanket because people get cold when they're going through these treatments. They contain a recipe book for stuff that's easy on the stomach. They contain a journal. And I've been advised that they would like to see my product inside of the Jay-Z Care Box at some point as a emotional psychological support tool during treatment. And so there is a lot of very strong avenues and a lot of people that can be impacted significantly by going through those clinical channels, but it just takes time.
Um, I should ask this earlier about when do you think you'll get your initial round of fundraising? Like when do you think you'll get that cash injection? Like within a year, like 12 months from now? What do you think?
Nothing's guaranteed. A
I
lot of
know.
the stuff you kind of just do your best guess.
Yeah.
We would say within the next 8 to 12 months, we'd like to raise the seed for production, and
Okay.
then early to mid next year have something on the shelves for consumers to buy.
Okay. Nice, dude. Okay, nice, nice. Yeah, we should do a follow episode. You know, follow up episode like a year from now or something like that. Be really cool. Um, what is we're kind of almost kind of towards the end. So what is just like what's your morning routine like? What's your morning routine like nowadays? Do you have one or yeah. What's your lifestyle? You know, like people want to know like what are founders like lifestyles like, you know, what time do they wake up? What fucking podcast, what food, you know? Like tell me about that kind of stuff, yeah.
I'm no different from any other person, and I think people who try to portray successful people as somebody with a super rigid, super disciplined regime daily is something that isn't inspiring to the everyday person. I do the
Mhm.
same thing everybody else does. Some mornings I grab a box of cereal. Some mornings I make a 6 course breakfast meal. Um, some
Mhm.
days I go to work for 12 hours and I'm tired. I don't want to do anything. Other days I'm motivated and do a week's worth of stuff in 3 hours. Um, it's it's just doing what you can when you can.
Mhm.
Especially working a job right now. Especially in the restaurant industry, which I work, the schedules are put out. You work different times, different
Right.
days every single week. There is no way to kind of make a regime.
Yeah. Um yeah, I like that. Like this is I don't know, it's what I kind of realized from talking to entrepreneurs and starting a small company. Like it's all just real life. It's all just regular, like there's no special sauce. There's no like everyone's just people and it's all just it's just as simple as it sounds. It's hard to put into words, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't
Do
have
you,
to wake up every morning and dunk my head in the side of a bowl of cold water
mhm.
in order to become
Yeah.
successful, right? Yeah, it's regular people doing extraordinary stuff only because they believe they can do it.
hmm And even the day to day is just like you said, it's just like calling a guy to submit a contract. It's just like I do a lot of like Google Voice shit. Like it's all just regular, I don't know, like real life normal shit, I guess. Um, Do you have a habit that's non-negotiable? Like, uh, yeah, like I like running or working out because I think it does give me some energy. Do you have a habit that's non-negotiable for your company and your life and that kind
I like to lift weights, and entrepreneurship is stressful, and having an outlet to vent that stress, that
of thing?
frustration, that anxiety, that self-doubt is important. So whether that's through exercise for some people or whether that's through an activity they enjoy or spending time with a partner, it's very important to have a way to funnel that energy outside of your mind. Because if you just leave it all in there, all that doubt, that anxiety, that stress, is going to impact your ability to work. You need to have a way to vent it.
Yeah, I like how you said that. If you just leave it all in there, if you just leave it all in your head, yeah, you got a way to vent it out. What's the hardest lesson you have learned so far as a founder?
There's been a lot. Nothing is easy. Nothing is simple. it's however hard you think something might be, a lot of times it's going to be 5 times harder, 5 times more complicated. Um, but it's only that way the first time you do it. Every time you do it after that, it becomes a little bit easier. Whether that's cold calling people, whether that's doing stuff like we're doing right now, having an interview. The more times you do it, the more confident you become in talking to people, the more confident you become in pitching yourself, your business. Um, it's just things are hard to begin with, and they get easier over time.
Okay, nice. Um, so you can kind of interpret this however you want, but it's if you had to start over from zero tomorrow, what's the first thing you would do differently? Just kind of answer that however you want.
There's not a lot I would do too differently. My execution path has been really good so far. Um, there might be miscellaneous person or two here and there that I spent time trying to talk to or pursue a relationship with that didn't go anywhere, that I just wouldn't, do that again if I started from zero and I knew what I knew now.
Uh-huh.
And, maybe there were certain stresses that I had about how I would do this or how would I do that that I knew now isn't going to be as big of a problem as I thought it would be then. But for the most part, the execution path has been pretty clean.
Nice. Um, yeah, we kind of asked this already, but like, okay, what's like a failure in the business that has taught you the most? So not necessarily like specifically, what's a failure from starting this thing, and what did that teach you?
This is gonna sound kind of silly, but the only failure I felt like I've had so far is when I did my business cards. I did everything correct, like they were telling me to do. Fill it out to these edges. We'll make sure it gets cut right. I spent like $80 on 50 cards because they're premium, super thick, color coded edges. They arrived and they weren't cut right, even though I'd done everything I was supposed to do. I was really irritated. I was genuinely irritated because I did everything I was supposed to do, but it didn't work. And I found myself getting really frustrated. But at a certain point, I stopped and I realized, like, hey, you can't be getting this frustrated about business cards because there are going to be things in the future that
Okay.
are objectively worse situations. If you can't control yourself just because your business cards don't look right and you got to wait 3 more weeks to get some that are correct, how are you going to manage yourself when you got bigger situations to deal with? And so it's that kind of learning about yourself, like, hey, you know, control yourself. Um, Things come and go. Not everything's going to work out right away. It doesn't mean
Mm.
you got to freak out or lose composure.
That's cool. Good for you for being able to step back and being like, I can't freak out over this because you're gonna have way bigger things that come up in the future. Um, I like this question. Maybe it's the drone starter, but what's the best advice you've ever gotten about business or life?
Anything is possible. That's if the average person who watches these interviews could know one thing, it's that anything is possible. I'm a line cook. I'm a high school graduate. I don't feel exceptionally intelligent or exceptionally smart. I don't feel exceptionally disciplined. Yet I've done things that a lot of people have commended me for that they find extraordinary. And so anything is possible. It doesn't matter who you are, what background you have, how old you are, what gender, what race you are. Anything is possible.
Yeah, I like that, dude. Maybe we'll play this back when you got fucking a company goes public or something. Play it
that'd be
possible.
uh that'd be a trip.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how big this market is, but like it seems like it's got a lot of potential, dude. Um, okay, so I'm gonna go to like the last section of like closing questions. Before I do, was there anything that like I kind of should have asked you, or that like it'd be good to touch on, or that you want to explain a little bit further? Just so far.
No, I feel like a lot of the questions had good depth and quality. No, I felt like it was pretty good.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, maybe if we can just move into some like miscellaneous just stuff.
Yeah, I mean these are just I always like to ask people this, so like what's your favorite quote or even multiple quotes, whether it's from poetry or a person in your life or some movie? Do you have any favorite quotes?
This is gonna be a little odd, I suppose, but on TikTok I saw this one product that you could buy, and what it was like a picture frame, and it showed like the New York Times front page of a newspaper, and written over that in big black words it said, "This could be you." And you sit there and you think about it and you say, that could be me. My name could be on the front page of a media outlet or a newspaper or maybe one day the Forbes. This could be you. And you sit there and you repeat that in your mind. This could be me. This could be me. And then you ask yourself, what do I need to do to make that possible?
Yeah, I like that, dude. I like that a lot. Um, Sounds like something I might even just like make for myself. Um, yeah, dude, that's really cool. It could totally be you. Um, Wait, hey, yeah, you said you read a lot. Do you read a lot of nonfiction, or do you read mostly like novels and stuff?
I read almost exclusively fiction, fantasy, nonfiction, a little bit of realistic fiction. Um, what I like about reading is that you get to explore worlds and concepts and environments that you don't get to experience in real life. And so I always found um like the books that talk about real life stuff to be kind of boring. Like if I wanted to experience that, I could go outside and experience that. I want to talk about like dragons and monsters and this and that. And as you get older, you get some people that call that childish. So like, screw you. It makes me happy, so I'll do what I want.
Yeah, okay, that's a totally fair answer. Wait, okay, but what about? Do you have a favorite book that some people read The Alchemist and it really helps them it helps them for the business, right? Do you have that one? Do you have that book? Um,
No, not The
okay.
Alchemist.
But
I mean,
like
there are some book series that I've read like
that I've like flipped
five,
the
six times over that are my favorite. Probably one of my favorites as a child that really cemented my love for reading was the Fablehaven series by Brandon Mull, and it was this concept that in the real world, every folklore or mythology creature that you ever heard exists, but they exist on these sanctuaries that are hidden from the world because in the modern age, people are everywhere, so they have to kind of conglomerate them and put them into these sanctuaries that are hidden. And then it's like they're trying to escape the sanctuaries, and there's this whole like narrative about it, and I loved it so much. And I remember when I was a kid, Brandon Mole had actually come to town,
huh.
and I had misbehaved though, so I wasn't allowed to go see him. But
Damn.
oh man, favorite. I've read his primary series, the follow up series. I've read his other novels. It's so mad. I don't even know what it is I
Yeah,
did
dude.
that I made it so I didn't deserve that. But man, I wanted something signed by him so bad.
Yeah, dude. Bro, you could totally still meet him, dude. Like once you have I feel like when I'm not a super connected person, but like once you have a little bit of success, I feel like you just kind of naturally bump into like third actors and stuff like that. You could very good chance you still meet this guy in person one day and like he signs a book or something like that for you.
Yeah,
What
it's
about?
possible.
Hmm,
I've met other authors of books I've read, and I've signed it. My younger sister, she reached out to Rick Riordan, the author of the Percy Jackson series,
yeah.
and he sent back a signed copy of his second book of the spin-off Apollo Trials series to her. And I was in my room punching the air. I was like, "It's not fair, man." I was like,
Do
"Oh
you?
man."
Yeah. Do you think that taught you any lessons as a kid? Like, oh, you gotta go ask for it, or you weren't even thinking that deep. You were just like salty that your sister.
I was happy for her.
Yeah.
but I was also disappointed it wasn't me.
Okay, yeah, that's yeah. Um, but okay, but if you had to pick a book that was like motivates you or even just like really change your perspective, not necessarily your favorite book, but like something like that that is significant to you, what would you say? Yeah.
I'd say the Gone series by Michael Grant. The main character is a guy that he doesn't like responsibility. He's lazy. He doesn't want to be the person in charge of everybody, but he's the best one for the job, and people continually expect that from him. And so he steps in the shoes regardless because he knows that he has the capability to do what needs to be done. And it wasn't a matter of I want to do it or I don't want to do it. It needs to be done. And so that's kind of like a viewpoint I have with my startup is that, I don't feel the best suited or perfectly qualified, but I can do it. I will do it. And so it will be done.
Nice. All right, like yeah, this is actually the last question, but just like favorite movie, or actually no, you got one more, which is your favorite song or artist, but favorite movie again, like more towards a category of like helps you for business or inspires you, or kind of leaning towards that side. What would you say one of your favorite movies is?
Well, I would say Avatar by James Cameron. So,
Okay. Yeah.
Avatar came out when I was 8 years old, and it was just the most incredible thing I've ever watched. I watched it like 50 times in every different format that there was to watch it, 3D, theater, 4K. Um, and then when the second movie came out, the Avatar Way of Water,
Yeah.
uh, I walked 2 miles through a blizzard to go see it on like the first screening of the first day that premiered.
Oh,
And I
that's cool.
showed up and I was the only person in the theater, probably because it was a blizzard. But I got the whole theater to myself on premiere day, and it is just something about it I love. And the new one comes out in December actually, here in like a month, and we're gonna travel 3 hours away and go to a premium theater where they have full course dining and bar that's delivered to your seat throughout the movie. And it's
Yeah.
just Avatar is my favorite movie by far. There's no symbolical this
Oh.
or that,
Oh.
or it affects the way I view life. I just think it's freaking awesome.
Okay. Totally. All right, and then last question is just what about music? Do you have a favorite like song or artist? You gotta have like some songs that like you don't just like, but like they kind of motivate you, they kind of inspire you, or artists or albums or music videos or something like
Um, what is this dude's name? You ever heard of Jelly Roll?
that. Yeah, yeah.
So Jelly Roll had I remember his name. Jelly Roll has a artist and friend of his called Struggle Jennings. That's like a lot more underground. But Struggle Jennings has a song called Get It Back. And in the lyrics, he says stuff like, somewhere along the way, I lost it all, I'll get it back. Um, People in the trenches hear the song, they feeling that. And, that's kind of the way I felt when I was homeless, where I felt like I'd lost everything. I might have lost it all, but I'm going to get it back. And so, um, that kind of inspired me a lot because this is a dude who went to prison and lost it all, and now he's a successful artist and he feeds his family and he has everything he wanted from life. And he's telling everybody else the same message that he realizes, like, you can lose it all, but you can get it all back.
Yeah, all right, it's a good end note. All right, yeah, okay, Mel, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and telling us all about Emet Ease. Do you have any closing words for the audience? Any closing words?
Yeah. If you have an idea and it's something that you think the world needs, don't be afraid to pursue it, because if you don't, maybe nobody else ever will. And you'll live that life of regret thinking you should have done something that you didn't. So, the worst thing that could happen is it doesn't work out. But what if it does?
All right, thank you. Yeah, Thank you so much for coming to the podcast, and thank you everybody for watching this episode.